Corbolic V2. This is a super safe and effective natural anabolic. Not only is this product going to help you increase protein synthesis, which basically means muscle recovery and growth, it also may inhibit myostatin, which is a protein in your body that is known to inhibit muscle growth. This is a complete natural anabolic that works through multiple different pathways, has multiple trademarked ingredients. If you are a natural athlete looking for that edge, Corbolic V2 is what you need. Get yourself some.
And on today's episode of the Pro Physique Code, Danica's the asshole. What? What? Swear to God, Lexi, don't you clip that out.
Oh, do it, Lexi. Keep it.
So today it's myself, Steven, Danica, and Coach Priscilla, which I still have never. You're always going to be your maiden name to me. I'm never going to remember your actual new surname. I just hope you realize that.
That's fine. I haven't changed my last name yet, so it's still Lamadrid.
Yeah. Cool.
What's your new last name?
My husband's last name is Samade.
Do you want to change it?
We're back and forth on it because he has like a hyphenated last name, so like I don't want to I want to keep part of my last name, so I don't want to have three of them, attached to it. So I'm still figuring out the logistics.
I wouldn't change nothing. I ain't changing nothing for no one. And what a good precursor to what we're talking about today.
Jillian, really quick, Jillian changed her last name.
Yeah, she totally did.
Yeah. Mine was Gilligan before before Johnson. Could you imagine? Gilligan was never a fun last name to have. Johnson is just so much better.
I mean, I would think Gilligan would be even worse, given that you grew up in the time of Gilligan's Island.
I 100% did. And that's all that they're like, Gilligan's Island. I'm like, oh my God, here we go again.
But which character were you always in their Gilligan fantasy? You were the professor, weren't you?
Oh my gosh, no. Who was like the one with I don't remember all their names.
Marianne was one of them.
Marianne, and then there was another one. There was like a blonde, maybe.
Right? You mean the actress one? The one that was like an actress?
Yes.
Very, very prissy, very expected a lot from everybody.
Yeah, for some reason, and that's not my personal name now, but for some reason growing up, my family would be like, and there she is.
Which is funny because that's who I am. I need to be taken care of. I am a soft, delicate young man.
He was a fairy.
I'm not even young anymore. Like, what the crap? I'm like middle-aged. Blah. So anyways, we're talking about put up or shut up today. So, there was the idea floated around and we'll kind of touch base on some of it. Like, how do you make the fitness thing work when you're traveling? How do you, make it work when things aren't necessarily the greatest? But at the end of the day, a lot of it comes to commitment. And at a certain point, you got to put up or shut up.
Yeah.
We all have barriers. And, we talk about that. Some barriers, very realistic. A lot of the time we talk about order of importance, right? Some things just come before that, and that's okay too. But at the end of the day, like we want to be committed to the things that we say are important to us. And that I think is a different kind of challenge than maybe what we normally talk. I'm like, oh, we always try to be nice. Let's try and be mean today. And so now I'm like really expecting Dana to just taint punch me metaphorically, just boom, just wreck it.
I totally will too. This stuff, well, I think I just did a Facebook post on this about, I think sometimes as people who are in the fitness industry or coaches that are like really good coaches and want just the best for people, you kind of reach a certain limit of like, okay, enough is enough. Like I can only take so many excuses. I can only take so many like reasons why you can't do it. Like either you're going to do it or you're not going to do it. And guess what? That's okay. Whatever you choose to do, do you, but don't complain about it in the process. Like, but I really want this goal, but I'm not going to make a forward step to get to that goal. Then I don't want to hear about it anymore, because we've talked about so many different ways that you can make it happen. And that's our job, is to help you navigate those challenges. But at the end of the day, if you're not going to put your foot forward and like take that initial step, I think sometimes it gets to the point where like, I even feel like then I'm out. Like, I don't want to talk to you about it. I don't want to hear about your goals. I'm out. Like, I cannot provide you any more emotional, mental, and physical support if you are literally just draining me trying to help you to take that next step. I'm out. Was that enough asshole enough?
I don't know, Priscilla, how do you feel about that?
No, I feel the same way. There's a certain point, where we can take, there's different kinds of coaches, right? Different approaches that we take. There's we can be, gentle, empathetic, we want to have a certain degree to that. But like you said, Danica, at one point, it's like if I'm providing you all of these different resources, these different things, helping with mindset, helping with all these different things, and they're just not, putting their foot down and actually doing it, what am I doing? Right? We want to make sure, I love this, this type of framework where, if we want to reach our goals, we need to align our choices with what we want those goals to be, right? If we don't make the steps that we want to towards it, I just don't want to hear, talking about it, like, oh, well, I can't reach it. It's like, well, what did you do this week? Were you able to, hit these goals that we talked about in your check-in last week? Or, these different things that we're trying to, break down goals to make it a little bit more achievable and, make these little steps to get there. But if the client is not making those steps, then, and they're not reaching their goals, ultimately it falls back on them and their choices. There's only so much we can do as coaches to be able to do that, right? And we work online, we are remote, so we can't, hold their hand and, walk them to the gym or walk them to, all these things. We can just provide all these resources, and ultimately it's up to them, in order to do it.
Yeah, so I think part of it comes from prioritization, right?
Hmm.
It's very easy to say something's important to us. For it to actually be important to us is different. Because if it actually is important to us, it forces us to make a behavior change, which is not easy. It's not simple. It's a pain in the ass. Um, we all have these, I don't know, sometimes lifetime of influence of this is my reaction to this situation. This is what I do. Uh, and so it's really easy to not be thinking about things and just intuitively go into this self-defeating kind of behavior for what you say, is important to you, and that's going to make you make maybe negative progress, or just spin your wheels and be pissed off and frustrated. I think that's why I dislike it the most, because when your actions and your words don't line up, it's one of the most self-defeating things that I see people go through. And I think that's why, like, it fires me up and it pisses me off. So I'm like, dude, we could simply just stop saying that this thing is important to you right now, or stop saying that we're gonna try and force this to happen, because it's obviously not enough to, facilitate that we're having the behavior changes. I think most of us try to make very small, reasonable changes, right? I'm not telling you to change your life overnight. I'm not telling you that you need to go to the gym 6 days a week and do, 12 hours of cycling a week when you've been doing absolutely nothing. No, I'm like, all right, cool. Well, let's work on these small things that are, reasonable. But when we set those goals and it's just not happening and not happening and not happening, at a certain point, we have to take a step back and look at that and say, are these really important to us? Because otherwise, all we're doing is in our own minds making ourselves a failure every single time that we mess it up, every single day. And that fucking sucks. Like, what a shitty situation to put ourselves in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think too, the something that I have found to be important, especially as a coach, or like with the mindset coaching, with the lifestyle coaching, competition coaching, all of it. And even with, I would even argue, even with parenting, um, if you keep that narrative on repeat, it's almost like that enables the negative, the regression, or that enables the lack thereof, because you're constantly just saying, well, the conversation is going to be I can't do this. I can't do this. Like you're keeping that positive, like, or either you're keeping that loop on repeat of I'm making excuses. I'm not going to do it. Like you're giving it energy and then it makes that excuse easily accessible. Once you shut that down and once you're like, I'm done with this narrative, I don't want to talk about this anymore. If you have other things to talk to me about, I would love to conversate about that. But this, we aren't going to talk about it anymore. We've already like, it's dead. It's like we've done it. We've gone there so many times. I'm done. Change up the narrative. And I think sometimes that has helped, at least I know in experience, that has helped people to be like, oh, I can't use that anymore. Like I got to do something now. Like that's not something I can go for. And she's not going to engage in conversation about this thing anymore. So now I have to do something. It like almost forces change in your internal dialogue.
Yeah, and that internal dialogue is so important. Like you said, if you keep telling yourself something, it's like manifesting it, right? You're going to keep talking about it. It's going to continue to be, true or, the narrative that you're fitting. And it also brings me back to, I think you talked about this at Command the Stage last year with the catching, catching your thoughts. Was it the three C's that you talked about? So catching those thoughts and be like, okay, I'm going to catch it, I'm going to cancel it, and then like reframe it, right? So that's a big thing too. If you're having that internal negative, loop of thoughts, catching yourself. And that's something I've talked about with clients, recently and in the past is, hey, if we're catching ourselves, if we're seeing these thoughts come up, if we can catch ourselves doing it and just shut that down, where it's at, that's a great place to start because then you're going to keep catching that behavior and catching that behavior. And then eventually it's going to dwindle down into where, oh, we're not thinking that anymore. I'm gonna, think about better things, or, instead of doing this, let's do this, right? So changing up that narrative and the internal dialogue is so important to it. And yeah, and also looking at, going back to something you said, Stephen, taking a look at, where they're at in life too, right? So if they're, saying this is important, this is a priority, this is what we're doing, but it's not happening, like you said, take that step back because sometimes it takes, that's what it takes to see, what's going on, just getting that bigger perspective of it and being like, hey, maybe right now, let's say that, we're going through, a tough part in school or a lot of stuff going on at work or, a big life change, right? And you're trying to force these habits that just aren't fitting into this. It's like putting, what is it, trying to fit a square into a circle hole? It's just not working. It's just not fitting. So taking a different route and saying like, hey, these goals are still here. We can reach these at another point, but this may just not be the right time to do so. We just need to pivot and, look at maybe maintaining during this tough, difficult time or learning how to, utilize different stress management techniques, get better sleep, etc. So you can prioritize what you've got going on. And then that other goal will be here, in the future when we feel better.
Yeah. And it's super important because when you try and force something and it's just not happening, right? So the reality of it is that even though we might feel that it's super important to us right now, the reality of action and follow through on that is that it's not as important as the other things. Then what happens is we create a negative association with that thing. Oh yeah, every time I try and start going to the gym now, it's like so hard because, well, you've had to get childcare and you haven't had the ability to find that. Or, your work hours have been all over the place and it's been difficult. You don't have the opportunity for exercise that's realistic for the schedule that work's putting you on, right? Those kind of things. And then now it's just reinforcing that negative connotation with the process that didn't need to be because there was this excessive amount of pressure on yourself to make something work that just wasn't realistic, or oftentimes not realistic in the idea that you had in your mind, right? You can make plenty of fitness progress and not lose weight, right? The number on the scale can be the same. You can put on muscle, you can get stronger, you can improve your energy levels, you can still lose body fat and gain muscle, right? And the scale can stay the same. And that could be done sometimes with very minimal effort. So, but what often happens is we focus on the scale. I have to lose weight. I have to lose weight. And so all of that other stuff, the fact that your waist measurement went down by 3 inches is dwarfed by the fact that we didn't lose weight when, of course, we didn't lose weight. You're sleeping 4 hours a night. You're drinking, a half a gallon of fluids a day. You're stressed to the gills and you're just trying to force everything else on top of it. if it was anybody else externally, you'd be like, oh wow, they're really, what are they trying to force that for? Like they're stressing themselves out over that. Like look at their life. They have so much on their plate already. But with ourselves, we're like, nah, no, fuck it. I can do it, right? I can do all things. Like, no, I can't. I can't do all things. You know, I tried to do a fraction the other day, like multiplying fractions. My dumb ass obviously forgot how to do it because I was so confident. And they're like, yeah, that's wrong. And I was like, cool, I'm stupid. This is what happens. It's been a while. And I'm like, so my confidence in the idea that like I should be able to do this, and I could if I took the time to do it. But am I going to do that? Nope. I ain't
Hmm.
going back to math.
Yeah.
I don't
Me when
think
I started
so.
school recently.
I so much came to mind and I had to write it down like scribble note. But Priscilla, how you said about like goal shifting almost. When I talk to my clients, I also say like I give them a wellness vision. What is your wellness vision? And it can't just include like, okay, we have measurements and we want to decrease body fat percentage and increase lean muscle mass and da da da. Like we want to lose weight. I get those goals, but I want to know about
Fuck
other
you,
things.
science guy. I get those goals.
I get those. I got you. But sometimes I need to remind them of their wellness vision because if I if I'm focusing, like I can goal shift, meaning if I'm focusing on the wrong thing at it's an inopportune time or a season of life to focus on like that one thing, I can focus on other variables that will probably contribute to the progress of that one thing without me bringing so much hyper focus to that one thing. So, for instance, would be I have a client who is struggling severely with the eating disorder, and weight restoration has been one of her goals. And doctors have done it, like her clinicians, she's worked with a previous coach. That is one of my goals for her, but that is not our focus because I want her to focus on creativity. I want her to focus on quality time with her husband. I want her to focus on dropping down from movement and resting her body more. Guess what? Weight restoration is probably going to happen when she focuses on those other things in her life. And she's probably going to be more engaged with weight restoration if she's working on those other things, when she feels more supportive, when she feels like she can rest her body, when she's not in an anxious state all the time. I don't want to bring focus to like this one thing that she wasn't able to get. Like she wasn't able to get that one thing. So let's focus on other areas that can help her to get to that without her being so hyper focused. Or you had mentioned too, Stephen, if someone's like, I just need to lose weight, I just need to lose weight, but they're on horrible shift working schedules and like they haven't figured out how to navigate shift work and they just had a baby
Which,
and
by the way, shift work is like one of the hardest things for people to lose weight with because you
100%.
have no regular circadian rhythm. Your sleep's all kind of goofed up. And people they can't truly rest and recover the same. So shift work's a bitch.
Yeah, yeah. And when I say to my clients, like, I do have a client who is a paramedic, and so she works shift work, but it's all over the place. So when I say to her, I love that you have the goals of like, you want to lose weight, you want to increase strength. I love that. Can we actually look over here though? And I want you to let's focus on just tracking sleep for a little bit. And she'll be like, what? Like, you mean I don't have to like count my macros and like move my body? I'm like, oh, well, those things are important, but like, I want you to look over here. And it's surprising how like she's like, oh my gosh, that's fun. Like I can engage in that stuff. Like I feel like I can digest that stuff a little bit. I feel like sometimes we forget that the things that we're super hyper focused on, sometimes we just need to zoom out a little bit and take a little bit of pressure away from those things and realize all the other variables that are contributing to the progress in that area. And it actually makes us like almost reset us or re-engage us to progress.
Hmm.
So side note real quick. How crazy is it how unimportant most people feel that sleep is
Mm.
when you literally go insane if you don't sleep?
That's what I talk about a lot with my clients is, actually I just had one this week with her check-in. Sleep, isn't very good. Stress is really high with work and, we're in a reverse right now and just having, that mindset shift with the reverse is already pretty difficult. So we are talking about sleep. I was like, look, and this is with every client, when talking about sleep, it's like, look, sleep is the most underrated aspect in the fitness industry. It's the most under talked about because it is so important. That's where your body recovers. That's where it's able to reset and rejuvenate. If we get shit sleep, then, everything else is going to feel not great, right? Our stress perceptors are going to be off. We're going to perceive something that may be like a small stressor as a much higher stressor. We could feel hungrier throughout the day. Our lift could just feel like trash, right? So it really all comes back to that sleep. And I like what you did, Danica, there. We're like, hey, let's focus on, this over here, right? And that brings us up to the topic of, goals versus a focus, right? So you can have these goals, but then you have these other focuses that come along the way. That's what I'll talk about with my clients and be like, hey, we're not going to make any, changes this week, but let's focus on this, right? Let's focus on sleep. Let's focus on your fiber or, all these different aspects that can all contribute to that one thing. And if we're hyper focusing on the scale, right? That's the big thing, right? The big thing is the scale. So if we're hyper focusing on that scale and, that's just where we're putting all of our eggs in that one basket, we could miss out on those other opportunities that, could be coming up. And it increases that overall stress level, which then can hinder that progress, right? So you're putting unnecessary and undue stress on yourself by focusing on this thing and doing yourself a disservice, honestly, when you could, be excelling in the gym. If your waist measurement drops an inch in a week, celebrate that shit, right? Because that's super important. That's going to decrease, your visceral fat. And, that's all, going back to that wellness vision, right? Be like, look, we want to get healthier. Yes, losing weight, losing body fat can help with that. But it's not just nutrition, it's not just macros and exercise. There's a whole lot more that goes into that. So I always tell people, like, hey, the scale is important, right? We're going to use that as a data point, but let's not put all of our eggs in that basket because if we do so, we can't share the excitement and the fun progress that we're doing in other aspects.
Yeah.
Oh, she said eggs and Easter's this weekend when this
I
is
know.
probably coming out. Oh, suckers.
With sleep really quick so people can like hear how important this is. This particular client has been a paramedic for 28 years and has done shift work for that long. Like she'll do 2 24s and then a 12 and then have 2 days off, or like it will be, I don't know, she doesn't know her schedule all the time.
So
Also,
this could also be like you have 2 days a week where you work days and 2 days a week where you work overnights.
yes, yeah. So there's no rhythm at all to her sleep at all for 28 years. And she has 4 kids. She also, oh my gosh, what is it called? Because I don't do it, but her kids slept with her until they were like 6. So today she was like, my youngest is 5 and he's still sleeping with me. And I was like, oh goodness gracious. She was like, you know what? I don't think in the past 18 years, I've not had a kid sleep with me because he started sleeping with me, well, right when he was born and the other one got out. And I was like, oh my God. Like, so anyways, I say all that because her doctors have given diagnosis of like, oh, you have PMDD, you have hypothyroidism, you have like name like a mood disorder, like name a bunch of different things. And she's like, I just feel like I am just given a lot of medication. I'm like, has any doctor ever asked you, how's your sleep? Like, how has your sleep been? She's like, no. I'm like, oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. Like, why don't we work on like that pillar of health and then see if you are able to emotionally regulate? Because my 5-year-old, when she doesn't get a good nap, there's no way she's emotionally regulating. She is tired, cranky, and you've had this for years upon years. Like, and then you're expecting yourself to show up at the gym when you haven't gotten any good sleep. You don't understand why you can't like be in a caloric deficit, why you're unable to do cardiovascular stuff why heart palpitations are happening, like why you can't focus, why you have brain fog. Like, I think sometimes you're right, sleep is so underrated. And if people just looked at that just one pillar of health and like just improved it maybe by 20, 30 minutes, or like started to examine it. Just start there. Just examine it. And then maybe if they shifted just with that, I bet you they'd be more engaged in other areas of health too.
So I can barely emotionally regulate, fucking period. Obviously. By the way, yeah, it's not good. Can you tell that I'm back on my good meds the past few weeks? Has my mood shifted? I'm like, ah, good. Life doesn't suck so much. Um, but like, so I think this is one of the big things that gets messed up. Well, because we said we would talk about travel and being successful still. Travel oftentimes completely destroys your sleep habits, especially if you're traveling into different time zones and overseas. Like I have a client who was traveling for, they're like a doctor of music, right? They have their doctorate in music and they do stuff and that kind of stuff. So they went stopped in one spot. I forgot the name of it. It's like South African country, and then went over to New Zealand. And he's like, "Man, my weight's not moving, even though we made it. We got to make a cut." I was like, we'll make a cut still too, but you need to take a few days and get your schedule back together, catch up on some sleep, and take care of yourself. Like it's so easy for jet lag, lack of sleep, movement, and the stress of that when you're traveling to be a really big factor in terms of things not moving. And that doesn't even like take into account like you might be weighing in on a different scale that's set differently and all that kind of stuff that could be messing with your head. So maybe don't do that either. But it's and it also messes with their digestion. Oh, like if I travel and fly, it's like a day or two before I'm pooping again. Like let's be real. Um, and normally things aren't like back to feeling good till I'm home. I have look, it's my little shrine, okay? It's my safe space. So like when you look at just those simple facts, and that's not, you don't have to be on a diet for that to be a factor. You don't have to be trying to lose weight or, bench press 400 pounds or any kind of stuff like that. Like you can just be living life. And like you said, that can be an impactor of your emotional regulation, which is going to impact the choices that you make with food, alcohol, drinks, all the rest of the stuff, which is all going to have this downstream impact on your weight, fitness, health, wellness goals as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And kind of going back to the travel portion of it, right, with sleep. And, you mentioned a little bit there, Stephen, about, maybe the scale is going to say something different, right? While you're traveling, maybe you're utilizing a different one. Another thing I'll talk about is, the expectations, right, when we come back from traveling. Because it's, you can come back, especially if you're flying or, even if you're driving, a few hours, right? Any type of travel that is, puts you out of your normal routine, right? Stuff like that, that can mess things up, right? That can kind of fuck with things a little bit. So it's good to have those realistic expectations of like, hey, when I come back, what can I expect, right? Scale could be a little bit up. Like you said, if you haven't gone to the bathroom, that could definitely be a factor. We could just feel a little bit more bloated. We could feel a little bit more inflamed. Like you said, if we have jet lag, then we're getting accustomed to that. Sleep is thrown off. So that's another aspect that can, be factored into it. So, I'll tell my people like, hey, when you come back from traveling, feel free to take a break from weighing yourself because we know that, we have these expectations or do so we can learn from it, right? Like, hey, let's look at, where's our body weight fluctuating, right? Because, maybe we come back from a trip and we weigh ourselves and then we start to freak out, when we can just, kind of scale that back, be like, look, these are the different things that affected it. It's okay, that we're feeling this way. It's okay that the scale reflects this because remember, the scale is one number. It does not tell us what our body's broken down into, right? It doesn't tell us our body composition, which is muscle mass and body fat.
Some of them
So
do.
I know some of them do, but if we're
They're
looking at
not
the
great
average,
anyways.
Do
they're
they
not accurate
though?
anyways. Yeah, they're
Do
more for
they?
reliability. Um, so, looking at that, we can learn from it. Like, hey, this is what changes, and then, the biggest takeaway is get back to your routine, the best that you possibly can. It doesn't have to be perfect either, right? We don't have to go from, being in an 8-hour time difference or 3-hour time difference to being, back to perfect after a day, because that's not realistic. That's going to put more pressure on you, which then adds stress. And then there's that cascade of effects. So if we come back and we're like, hey, let's just try to get good sleep. Let's try to, drink some water and try to get some meal prepping in. Then slowly over the course of the week, we get back to our normal routine. Then we start to see things kind of shift back down. And then we're able to, kind of get back to it. So it's having those realistic expectations that, hey, when I come back from travel, things could feel off. The scale can be off. I may feel really bloated, and that's okay because we're not in our normal routine, our normal rhythm, and all that stuff can be really thrown off.
I
Yeah.
think also one of the things most people don't recognize, like so there are people that travel all the time for work. There are people that travel just for personal pleasure and whatever, vacation kind of stuff. If you're a person that every time you travel, regardless of that situation, you come back and you're up 2, 3, 4 pounds, and now you're traveling and your weight maintained, guess what? You made progress. People
Mm.
like, and so that's another thing that you also have to be able to delineate that will help you to continue to put up is understanding like, oh, you know what? Every single time I travel, I'm afraid to get back on the scale because I didn't think about anything at all. But I made intentional decisions and I wasn't afraid to get back on the scale. That's a huge win mentally. The scale stayed stable and it's always been up 4 pounds. That's a huge win in terms of how you handle the travel. Your lifestyle choices and how you manage that improved significantly at that point. So hell to it if it didn't go down. Like you still have to understand that those are progress pieces. Because another part of the put up or shut up that I think people take away from themselves is they only look at, I have to get to point whatever. And they never look at any of the stuff in between that that's getting them closer to that. All they look at is that they're not at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say another thing that I like to for intake calls too, or if somebody, I guess if it's a client and they had like a rough week or whatever it may be, if they're like rattling off, like your heavy hitters are going to be like travel, vacation, finances, kids, time, right?
Moving,
What?
moving.
Moving. Great.
Ugh.
I will say to them, oh my gosh, it sounds like you have so many cool opportunities for you to challenge yourself and for you to like grow and like learn so much about yourself. I'm so excited for you. They're like, this bitch. Like she,
I say that
she,
every time I talk to you.
she would. But but the reality is all of those things are going to really show you, what you're capable of. And they are going to be areas of opportunity. If you're telling me that, like, well, I have kids and I'm like, cool, that is awesome. Like, I don't see how this can't be twisted into an opportunity for you to model awesome behavior, be stronger for your kids, change up lifestyle routines around your children. Like, what cool opportunities. So, any like excuse that people want to send to me, I will manipulate that around to be like, what a cool friggin' challenge and opportunity. It's either excuses or is this a situational challenge or a situational opportunity that you were just gifted? Let's go after it.
Challenge accepted.
Did I say that last week when we were talking how I've been reframing things with using the word challenge for a lot of people? Like, oh, I had this problem, I had this thing that came up. I was like,
Mhm.
yeah, like it's cool because when we hear the word challenge, we're like, oh, well, I can overcome a challenge. Versus the way that we word things in a lot of other situations, it makes it feel like we've already lost or like that we don't have the opportunity to succeed on it. And so I know it's semantics, but that shit's important, especially with our internal dialogue and our external dialogue because other people see that. So if you have kids, even more important how you speak
Mhm.
out loud about yourself because we're setting an example for them, right? I'm setting a bad example. You should not. Um, Danica's just like, this is why you're not ever allowed around my kids. But it matters for your success too, because that's how you build up that confidence. Like, you're not going to be typically super confident going into stage your first time. But there's a big difference between if you've practiced your posing and you've been on it and you've been doing that on a consistent basis and you're really, it feels good versus if you have no idea what you're doing, you're like, oh God, this is, ugh. There's a big difference between if you've, been to a show and seen it and watched it or researched online of, okay, this is what to expect, this is how to go, all that kind of stuff versus just walking in blind. And so when you change that dynamic with yourself, of, okay, cool, I can be more confident because I'm building up wins and I'm making that easier by making sure that I'm talking about the things that I want to accomplish in a way that like it situates them to be realistic
Mm.
and doable is completely different because a lot of times most people they shut themselves out of things before they ever even get started.
Agree. Yeah. Another uh, excuse or for them an excuse or
Air
maybe a
quote excuse for those of you not
air
watching
quote
us.
excuse that has been comical for me lately is I've had a few people come to me and they've been like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to work with you. I'm excited to have like a young person that's like super vibrant and like, it's going to help me out. And I'm 41 and I just needed someone younger. And I'm like, that's so awesome. I just turned 40. Like, and girlfriend, we're in the same decade. So like age cannot be an excuse. Like it's not, and people are going to be like, yeah, but what about mechanics and da da da? Okay. But like, if that's what you're holding on to, like, my goodness, like, do not let that define what you're capable of. If anything, what a cool opportunity for you to be in your 40s and to like go after what you want to go after. How cool would it be for you to say, you know what, in my 20s, I thought I was really strong, but my goodness, in my 40s, like I have mature muscle. I'm actually more developed. So my hormones might be a little wonky in my 40s, maybe for a female, but what a cool opportunity for me to be in this season of life and for me to be the best version of myself in this season of life, no matter what the age says. So when people come to me with like age as an excuse, I think that riles me up even more because I'm like, says who? Says who? Like, who told you that? And actually, with every excuse, I think I would say that when they're coming at me with something, I'm like, who told you that? Who told you that you can't achieve your goal because you don't have a measuring cup? Who said that to you? They'll be like, me. And I'm like, well, good grief, kick yourself out of the house, find a new companion, and like reintroduce yourself at a later time when like they have done their own work. Like you can bring yourself back in, right? Like don't let that version of you or that part of you that just wants to like chain you up and hold you down be the one that takes control of the rest of your life and determines your success or not.
Yeah. And we're our own worst critics, right? I know we talked about that a little bit here where, like with barriers, right? We can be our own worst critic. We can, expect perfection out of ourselves and all of that. And ultimately, that can be our downfall, is ourselves, right? If we just keep beating ourselves up and saying, like, oh, well, I can't do this and I can't do that. If you keep telling yourself that, ultimately, it's going to come true, right? So we want to reframe that and be like, look, like you said, kick yourself out for a little bit, bring you back whenever we can, reintroduce you again, like take a break, like go take a breather, take a vacation for a second, that other half of you. Let's get the other half of you, like here currently, feeling much better, right? Let's set up these things that we can do. Let's set up these, these protocols, these practices that we can put into play to help you out with it. Because there's so many times where I've seen, just self-limiting beliefs. And that really can hold people back. So when you start pulling back these layers and asking, why do you think that? Who told you that? Where are you getting these concepts and ideas? Then we can peel these back and start to, dive into a little bit more, get more into like the deeper, sense of self. And, what do you like? Is this a goal that you want, or is this a goal that somebody else told you that you want? Or is this a goal that you saw online? They're like, hey, that would be cool, but is this something that I really want? Because that brings up another topic of intrinsic motivation, right? So the motivation that we have within us, instead of looking to someone else, comparing yourself to somebody else, and, really robbing yourself of, what you're achieving, what you're able to achieve, right? So that can be it can be defeating.
So
Mhm.
I think that one's hard for a lot of people because there are people who have lived decades of their lives in pursuit of somebody else's goal for them, in
Right.
pursuit of something that they never truly cared about, that was never going to bring them fulfillment or happiness, but that they have pursued for that. And trying to come to terms with that and even accept that, being like, oh, fuck, I've been doing this because of this, whatever, with my dad or my mom, or because I felt like I needed this, and I don't even fucking care about that anymore. I never cared about this. Why did I do this? And the cool thing about that is nowadays we recognize that we can reinvent ourselves at any age, at any point in life, at any time. But that still has, I think, for many people, a large degree of guilt with it. And so accepting that and recognizing that can be very difficult for a lot of people because of that. And then your identity is now challenged. You're like, well, I thought I was this person and I thought this was going on. And now I'm like, I realize I don't even care about that anymore. How am I supposed to start over? How am I supposed to do XYZ? How am I supposed to figure this out? And that's like a completely other thing that's way down the rabbit hole. I'm gonna stop me right there because I know one of you is gonna have something to say.
Well, I think it is important to explore that. You asked a really great question. Why do I do that? And what is that protecting me from? Like, when did this start? Why do I do that? And what is this protecting me from? Because I do feel that internally we have different parts of us that manifest in certain ways that usually when we're growing up protect us from certain things. And so they serve a purpose. Like when we're usually it starts younger, they serve a great purpose, and they are the protectors and they are the firefighters that like come in and they're like, we got you, we got you. So the self is kind of put in the back, and you have protectors and parts of you that like are managers and protectors, and like they shelter you and they help you to navigate, right? And then we keep holding on to those parts. And that's okay because they served us well. So we can appreciate them. They aren't bad things. Like they're literally just protectors, and they served a really important role. When we start to explain, like when we start to expose them for what they are, and then remind them, like, then our self comes out and we're like, hey, dude, thanks for what you did back there, like when I was 8, except for I'm 40. And I know you think I'm still 8, but I'm actually grown. I love you. Thanks for all that you did for me. I'm going to actually be in charge now. Like I'm actually gonna be in charge, and myself, my like authentic self, my genuine self, I'm actually gonna take the reins now. I appreciate you, and this is great. Good effort, but I no longer need you. So that's something I love the question of like, why did I do this? It's great opportunity to explore, and anybody can do that for themselves. It doesn't take like if they're ready for it and if they're ready to expose. So like anybody can explore that for themselves and realize like, are there protectors that come into play all the time? Or am I letting those protectors go because I don't need them anymore?
But it kind of takes you got to have some big ovaries to ask the questions and to address it. I say big ovaries because they're like the lady balls, you know?
Yeah.
So that's the best
Yeah,
I
you
can come up.
do. Yeah, because it like I'll give like if people are like, what the fuck is she talking about? I'll give them for instance. So like growing up, no one apologized for what they did, and there was just constant tension. So I need now in my life.
Hello, girl. Hello, same.
Hey. So like I
Hopefully
need to
there's
like almost over explain, or like I need to have a good understanding of things, and like or I start to revert back and get really quiet, like, and so I know that the way that I navigated that was to be like, oh shit, no one's like, there's tension, I'll just like be the best version of me, and like everybody's good, I will put out all the fires, and like everyone's gonna be okay. I protected myself from that, but like I'm 40 years old, I don't need to do that anymore. I don't need to be in complete control anymore. Like, I don't need to always over explain myself. Although Stephen would probably say, I've done that a few times with Stephen when I've been like, this is what I'm thinking. And oh my God, what if they're saying this and da da da? And he said to be like, stop, like, stop. Like, you're good. Stop.
Yeah, but
Um,
I'm like ADHD too, so I over explain shit all the time because I'll say something that's like 42 steps away and nobody understands it. And so then like, what the fuck are you talking about, guy? And I'm like, oh God, okay. So anyways, in 1942, yeah,
But I think that it is important to know the parts of us, because we have to have parts of us. Like there can't just be so if people want to explore this, it's internal family systems. It's like internal family systems. There has to be parts of us, right? A protecting part that comes up that like is able to emotionally regulate really quick, to act immediate in like emergency situations and like take emotion out of it. There has to be a part of us that's like a more emotionally caring. Like we are humans. We have to be very like we have to have multi layers and like versions of us, right? But
Like an
sometimes
onion, right?
we're like an onion, but sometimes there are parts of us that come up that are not necessary, that are just trying to protect us and hold us back. Like, oh, you want to go and achieve that goal of your own goal? No, 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 no. We should probably shame you for that. We should guilt you for that. And we should probably definitely just have like negative narrative about that all the time. So being able to recognize like, is this really ultimately me that's deciding this? Like, what do I want to go after? And like appreciate the parts of you, but know like what your genuine, authentic self wants to go and achieve. And that's hard. That's hard work for everybody to do. And it's not just like work that you do after like 12 sessions. It's like a constant, like it is a constant check, as it should be. We are always evolving and growing and changing. And the stimulation, the external stimulation will too always evolve, grow, and change. So we need to be able to just know that about our human self, recognize it, and like, what a cool opportunity to like have that skill set to be able to always check yourself and like say, cool, is this is a protector firefighter? Do I need to check it? Is this like the villain coming out? Do I need to check it? Or is this like my higher self coming out?
Yeah. And taking all of that, I think like the takeaway from today's and be like, everything's an opportunity. Because Danica said so.
An opportunity to fail.
Cut the shit. See everybody, see everything as an opportunity. Cut
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's a way to, to continue to grow and adapt, right? Because if we stay where we're at, right? If we stay complacent, there's no growth, right? As humans, we're going to continue to grow no matter what phase in life we are, no matter how old we are, we continue to grow because we continue to learn. We have new goals, we have new things. Like you said, we're learning who our authentic self is. So we're obviously going to change and grow and adapt to that. So it's also adapting to those different stimuli, the different stressors that come apart, right? So, if we're talking about travel, learning how to adapt to these different changes, right? And like Stephen talked about, if someone comes back from a trip and they're, 4 pounds heavier, but then they come back, later and they're at maintenance, looking at the, you know, the different things that came up during those travel, opportunities, that we have here to adapt and be like, okay, how can we get better here? How can we get better here? Or if, moving comes up or, a life change, a job change, these are all ways that we can learn to adapt. And if we can adapt better, we're able to just make better progress, right? We're able to make things a little bit more streamlined. It's not going to be seamless, right? It's not going to be smooth. There's always going to be ups and downs. But if we can make it to where we handle these things a little bit better and we have systems in place that we can, fall back into our routine or, kind of rely on our protocols to do these things, it makes it a little bit easier to get back into the swing of things and to be able to adapt to the different things that come up, our surroundings, our situations, etc.
Yeah, and so I think this is the hard work most people don't want to do because it's like we can give you very simple ways. Hey, if you're traveling, you could use something like beef jerky or like tuna packets so that you can still hit protein while you travel. Or you can use the high protein muscle milks or Fairlifes that you can find at most grocery stores if you're finding it difficult to hit your protein intake while you're traveling and out and about. You can order grilled chicken breast and you can order veggies with, no butter or no oil if you need to, and rice, and make it very simple and straightforward from a restaurant out. Pretty much all of them have something that will match that. You don't have to get the burger and fries per se. You don't have to get the 16-ounce ribeye. You know what I mean? Like we don't have to do those things. But what makes it easier to make the more intentional choice for what's going to support your goals? And a lot of that is one, understanding your personal habits that are pushing you towards making choices that aren't beneficial for you and that aren't taking you towards the point that you want to be at. And then emphasizing how you build up the resilience or the habits that make it easier to do the right things. So you're like, oh, well, I hate that. But like, all right, cool. Well, go to Smoothie King and get something then, right? You don't have to go to uh the what what can I say? You don't have to go to the fast food golden god, you know, what was it in Clerks movies? You don't have to go to movies to get breakfast every day, right? You can do something different. And there's other options out there that you can do that will make it easier. And so if you like those things and they're friendly, great. Let's endorse the good habits and let's look at how we take away the megaphone that screams in our subconscious brain to do the things that are going to just, keep us stuck in the same rut.
Yeah. I have a 16-year-old client that I'm working with, and she is beyond her years. Like, so she
So she's
she
weird.
what?
Whenever anybody told me that I was very mature for my age, they just
You're
meant
an
I was
old
fucking weird.
soul. You're an old
Yeah.
soul.
Yeah, that just meant I was weird.
No. So she went through her own struggles, and we have worked together through like the struggles of things. And then now, just yesterday, she said, I'm just reflecting more on like where I'm at in life. And she said, it doesn't, the choices that you think are like the food choices that are, I don't know, like the quick dopamine fixes, or like the saying no because I'm just like not into it today. She says it doesn't make you as happy as you actually think it does. And then she was like, there's so much value in choices and power in choices. And I am now learning that, like, at the end of the day, I have that power, and that power is very valuable. And I can make choices that either set me up for success and make me happy long-term wise, or don't. And I was like, Mom, like, where did you come from? I like had to pat myself on the back because we've done a lot of work, but that's awesome. Like, to know at 16, wow, choice is a pretty fucking cool thing.
So
Like, have that choice.
let me ask you a question. Do you feel like, because I think a lot of people, the dopamine hit happiness is, sure, it's short-lived. We all know that. But I think that the difference there is fulfillment, right? Not, and we can equate that with happiness or whatever you meant, because if something doesn't have lasting power, if it's just a quick dopamine hit and we're like, snacky snack, yeah. And then, 20 minutes later, we're like sad again, versus something that makes me feel in control and gives me a longer term um, fulfillment. Which one truly makes you happier or increases quality more so? So I think that's like a weird, well, maybe not even a weird question, but an interesting question in terms of, again, semantics, I'm sure, for how we look at that, because obviously that's very, very wise for her to recognize at 16, for Christ's sake. But it's one of those things where I think too many people that are adults are constantly chasing happiness instead of chasing fulfillment. And I think that's an important delineation to make, because I think that they correlate the two as the same thing. And because happiness tends to be very short-lived, they're consistently chasing the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, instead of finding something that brings them fulfillment, which will give them longer term, more substantial positive impact in terms of life.
Yeah. And that kind of goes back to a little bit of what we were talking about, prior to jumping on is, the spinning their wheels, right? So if someone is just chasing that next dopamine hit, that next short-lived, quote unquote happiness, this is where the wheels start spinning, right? Because they keep doing the same thing over and over again. It gives them that short dopamine hit, but then they feel bad, but then they want that dopamine hit again because they feel bad, right? To kind of cope with it, right? Going back into that coping mechanism. So that puts us into this wheel that we're just kind of spinning, right? We're in a glass case of emotion, right? We can't get out, right? We're just trying to just keep going in circles.
Baxter.
That sounds exhausting.
Right? It's like a hamster wheel.
What do you mean that sounds exhausting? Like you don't watch people do it every single day, Danica.
No, I do. And then I look at them like, that sounds exhausting.
Exhausting.
And then I'm always reminding them, I'm like, I'm exhausted just by listening. Like I want out. Like I'm nauseous and I want to
Yeah.
go. It makes me think of like the rotor. Did you guys ever like experience the rotor? We have the Great Escape, which is Six Flags, but the rotor was like you go up against the wall and you just go in a circle and then the floor drops. You
Mm.
would vomit. Like you would just vomit. That's what it makes me think of. I don't ever want to voluntarily be like, you know what? Sign me up without buckle. Don't even buckle me in. I'm here for the ride.
Living life on the edge. Yeah. So if we just keep, keep chasing that next hit, of dopamine, then where's that fulfillment? Where does it ultimately come into play? Right. And it's never, this is another thing I hear is that, oh, I'm so and so age. This is too late for me. I can't start this. And that's another one that kind of grinds my gears because you see people, in their 60s, their 70s, their 80s deadlifting, powerlifting. You see all these videos of people doing this and you're like, well, if they can do it, I can go walk for 30 minutes, right?
Mm.
I can do these little tasks that are going to build up to these bigger, these bigger changes, these bigger goals, these bigger, wellness visions, right? Things that we want to achieve with that. So, and that kind of goes back to, the age, quote unquote, age being a quote unquote barrier, right? With it, there's no such thing as it's too late to make changes. You can make them now. You can make them in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 60s, 70s. I've worked with clients who are in their 60s and 70s. When I was doing in-person training, I had a client who was 92 who really wanted to manage her sciatica. So she came into the gym. We trained twice a week. She felt a lot better. It's never too late to start working on, a better version of yourself.
Yeah, I think people like, so another thing that I've heard is, and this really got me, someone said to me, so and so is diagnosed with prostate cancer and they're a doctor and like, but they never got tested, so they were diagnosed and like, and he's like skier and like he does mountain bike racing and like he eats really well, he does all the things. And see, he even got cancer. So what's the point? What?
We're
What?
all gonna die and be
What
forgotten
do you
anyways.
mean?
What's
What's
the
the
point of
point?
any of it?
What's the point? What is the point? Like that, I was like, that sounds foolish. Like the fact
Hmm.
that like you just said that sounds foolish.
Yeah.
And if like you're just looking for excuses because it's harder to take that first step, then we need to do a little bit of digging. Like, but I think it's just easier sometimes. The amount of excuses are, it's like really easy to come up with so many different reasons why not to. And it's hard to say, like, this will be challenging, this will be hard. Like, I will face some tension and some sacrifice. And like, I think we just look constantly for the path of least resistance or the thing that's easy to access. And we need to just shut up and do it. Like, just shut up and do it.
I'm gonna challenge you on that. I don't
Oh,
think that's true.
I like challenges. Challenges are
I don't
opportunities.
I don't think people do take the easiest route. I think they take the easiest route in the
Mm.
short term. They take what's easiest right now. Because
Ah,
most of us would say, oh, this decision, these actions would be much better for me in the long term. They would create a lot of benefits. And even though it would suck at first to get used to it and to figure it out and to do it, overall, long term, it's going to be so much better for me. Right. So even if I do get prostate cancer, which my uncle got prostate cancer, you know, found it when it was stage 4. Okay, that was it. Sucks. But if I was going to get a kind of cancer, prostate cancer would be the one I would want to get. That's, best chances of survival with prostate cancer. But even if I'm going to get prostate cancer, I probably was going to get prostate cancer anyways, right? Let's be real. So me doing the things to be healthy, to be active, to enjoy my life in the ways that I want it, was that really more work? Was that really a net negative? No. It might have been more work to get to that point and to get there and to get out of the other habits. But in the long term, it was a huge benefit. And so I think that by and large, it is the short term that people are concerned with. Same thing with like, I want to be at point Z. I don't care about any of the stuff in between. Um, and I want it yesterday, right? So they tend to do what is easiest or feels most beneficial in the moment, regardless of whether or not long term that is the best decision. Because otherwise, people would make very different decisions in general, myself included.
Well, I think it is maybe those are like the harder choices sometimes because we wrap emotion in them too. Like I give my clients 5 seconds. Like if you have to make a decision to like go to the gym or not, if you have to make the decision to prep the meals or not, get out of bed or not, or put your sneakers on or not, like those small choices that lead to the bigger behaviors, give yourself 5 seconds, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or it's probably going to not go in the direction that you want it to go because you choose like the easier one or like the less frictional one, or like that's a quick habit loop to jump into and it takes about 5 seconds for any habit loop to kick in. So if you know that it's the like those small consecutive choices that are going to help you, maybe it's working on that first of I'm going to give myself 5 seconds every time I have to make a choice. Like that seems pretty overwhelming, but if it makes, once you start to implement that, it does help. Like if I say to myself, okay, I really should drink water. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and like get the water. Like just get it. 5 seconds to go after it. So I agree with you, Stephen. It's those choices are a little bit harder because I think what also is in play is like, yeah, but like it's so much easier not to. Like, why would you bother? And then it adds up. It adds up, and then you don't go to the gym.
Yeah. But it's only easier in that moment.
Only in that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you get things going, right, it's the law of motion, right? Things
Yeah.
obviously that are in motion are going to stay in motion. So if we get up, make that 5 second decision, like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I'm going to drink this water, chances are you're going to do it again, right? And if you don't do it, you're not going to move. The same thing with like those little habits to go to the gym, right? So if you're like, okay, 5 seconds to put my shoes on, you're gonna put your shoes on. You're like, okay, the next step's easier, so I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna grab my keys, I'm gonna grab my water bottle, I'm gonna go to the gym, and once I'm there, I already made the drive here, so why not go inside and do what I have to do? I just drove all the way here. Why am I just gonna go back home when I've already made this commitment to do so?
I think be aware. Probably don't take that same approach with the intrusive thoughts. Oh man, I should steal that. I should steal that guy's truck. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yes. Don't do it. Don't do that.
I know.
Situational choices.
Yeah.
Situational awareness as to where we use the
I think
5 second rule.
Unintentional choices, not on the this is an intrusive thought. Which, by the way, some people are like, "Oh my god, I have intrusive thoughts. I dyed my hair pink." I was like, "That's your intrusive thoughts."
Okay.
Ooh, I'm mentally unstable.
I do think it is important to like people. One of the best, well, not, I can't say best coaches. He was a very hard coach. There were no excuses, and I appreciated that. Like he'd say, like, if I said, unless it was like a medical reason, like unless like
I'm pretty sure I already know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Sacrifice to win.
Yes.
Yep. I know who you're talking about. I hated that shit. I hated hearing about that.
Same. But then there's a part of me that's like, there's a middle ground. And there's definitely like, you don't need to enable excuses so much. And for yourself too, right? Like you shouldn't be your own enabler all the time. And you should probably have this hard ass that's in you a little bit too. There should be this happy medium where like you can say, is this an excuse right now? And like, am I just enabling that excuse, or is this like an opportunity for me right now? And like have that check-in version with yourself all the time. You don't have to be balls to the wall, hardcore, like hardcore, do it till you die. I don't think that is healthy. I also don't think it's healthy if you've been repeating the same goal over and over again for the last 5 years and you have yet to make one step towards that goal. I don't think that's healthy. I think that the way that you communicate with yourself, probably you need to reevaluate. So there has to be like a middle ground and like someone that is going to push you a little bit and someone that's going to have understanding around it too.
I think that it's important to be able to say in myself, like if I'm making an excuse, be like, yeah, I'm just making excuses why I'm not back yet. I'm making excuses why I'm not doing that yet. At least then I'm owning it,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And so I don't have to guilt trip myself over that the same way. But like, no, I know exactly what I'm doing. This is what I'm choosing to do. At some point, I will change it, but right now, this is where my comfort level's at, and that's what I'm doing. Because now, I'm not saying that I'm should be doing something and feeling bad about it all the time. I say, you know what? Sure, that would be good for me, but right now, I'm not going to do that.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's the meeting yourself where you're at, right? And that's also another characteristic of, coaches I think is very valuable, right? If we can, meet the client where they're at, like, okay, this is what we can do right now. This is the amount of effort we can put in. Let's adjust what we're doing to what you're able to do right now. And then we stack habits on top of that. Try to go a little bit more this day, get 1% better this next week, and, try to focus on this next thing the other week. So being able to, meet yourself where you're at, with your internal dialogue as to what you are able to do. Because if it's another thing with comparison, right? If you're comparing yourself and your goals to someone else, and you're like, oh, well, they're doing this, this, and this, I always pull back and be like, hey, we don't know what they're, where did they start? How long ago did they start? What type of approaches and methods are they utilizing? Where are they at? Chances are they're in a different situation than you are, right? Maybe they're, the client's a teacher and the other person is just, full-time stay-at-home mom, can focus on herself at all times, or, the kids and everything. Two different things, right? So you have to learn to be aware of, where, what are my goals? What can I do right now? Where can I meet myself in the middle and make, changes, put these things in place that are going to help me get there. But like you said, I don't have to go balls to the wall and go, if I'm going to the gym 2 times a week and then go to 6, right? Chances are we're going to fall off.
Ovaries to the wall. Okay. I thought we
Ovaries to the
already.
wall. Okay. We're going to do ovaries to the wall. We're going ovaries to the wall. Chances are we're going to burn out.
Oh my God. Could you imagine if that catches on?
Over to the wall. It might.
Trademarked.
Be like, she's got the biggest ovaries I've ever seen, just talking about like someone that just does crazy stuff. Yeah. Like, man.
I also think it's important to explore, like, if you do present quote unquote excuses, are they legitimate? Like,
Right. Like, are they actual limitations or are they self-imposed limitations?
exactly.
I like that word limitations a lot instead of excuses. Be like, is it self-imposed or is it something that we can overcome?
Yeah. And are you creating it to be, I think sometimes we create it to be more complex than it actually has to be. So then it's like a real wall that's like standing between us and the goal. And I have found that even for myself, like moving to Alabama, I didn't have a gym membership. We had 2 resistance bands. I didn't have any family. I didn't have like anything, but I was like, there's no way that I'm going to say, well, I don't have a gym membership and I don't have like any equipment, so I'm not going to work out. Like that was, oh, that can't be an excuse because it's not legitimate. Like I can still move my body. So that can't be an actual excuse. So when people are like, well, I don't really have a gym membership, so I don't think I can work out. I'm like, as who? Like, who told you that one? Or if they say like, well, I don't have childcare, so I can't work out. I'm like, says who? Like, who told you about this version of working out that only needs to be in the gym? Like, let me please take their number down. So being able to check your excuses, and did you create them? Like, did you actually write those excuses up and you believe them so wholeheartedly? But if you were to present those excuses to someone else who may be in the same situation, they'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. That's not an excuse.
Or even
So
just
I
like
think,
writing them down.
yeah. And I think sometimes the goal is complex. Sometimes it is a lot. But even if that's the case, you don't need to look at end goal because there are a bunch of different steps between you and that goal that are simple and that are going to be much more realistic and easy to master. The entire point is that we don't start with trigonometry. We're like, okay, cool. Let's figure out how to add and subtract first. Then when adding some subtracting doesn't take all that effort anymore, guess what? Now we have more energy and attention to put into multiplication or the next thing, right? And then we can move on to the next. And so when you have these big goals, break them down into smaller goals and pieces. Yeah, I know it's not as sexy, whatever, but now it's digestible and easy to do. Now it's something that's realistic if you do have limitations. And when that stops taking the same amount of time and effort, now we move to the next one and the next one, and then we succeed.
Yeah. And knowing that, going back to something you just said there, this process isn't always glamorous. It's not always sexy. It's not always the jewels and bikinis and, all that stuff that you see on stage, because that takes a lot of fucking work to get there, right? They have to, they earn that, to be able to go on stage and do that. So it's not always going to be sexy. It's not always going to be glamorous. It's not always going to be fun, right? Because when we get, deep into a deficit, or if we're, really trying to, push ourselves in the gym, hit new PRs, it can suck, right? We get hungry, we get, sore, there's all these different things that come along with it. So, that's a lot of stuff that's been going on social media is, highlighting things, right? Social media is a highlight reel, essentially. So knowing that it's not going to be easy, right? We're going to have to face these challenges. We're going to have to, overcome these different things internally, externally, in order to get to where we want to be. That was another part I wanted to talk about, but I lost it.
It's all right. We're
Sucks.
probably going on too long
Yeah.
anyways. We're
I
about
want to say, let me say one more quick thing. I think that with any goal that you have, there should also be expression of yourself within your goal. So, for
Fuck
instance,
yeah.
if your goal is to be
Snaps.
able to you want to achieve a fitness goal, but the expression of yourself is not you don't really vibe with jogging, or you don't really vibe with lifting weights, particularly doing specific barbell exercises. If that's not what calls to you and speaks to you, don't try to make that fit so much. You should be able to have an expression of yourself through your fitness and health goals too. If you like to skip down the road, garden, jump rope, rock climb, do rocks, if you want to do all those things, and that is an expression of your version of self, you're going to get to your goals a lot faster through doing that.
All right. So let's end on, I love that, but I had a joke that, yes, social media is a highlight reel, but I like to highlight my mental health issues. Got him. All right. Thanks for listening, guys. Let us know what you think. If you have ideas, comments, things you want to tell me that I'm beautiful, hit it up in the comments, like, subscribe, all that kind of good stuff. And we'll talk to you next week.